This is something that everybody talks about, about sort of places that have horrible feelings in them. So this was written in 1976, Ghosts, Poltergeists and Haunted Houses. Many people have speculated throughout the centuries as to what a haunted house really is. Strange manifestations described as poltergeists have been recorded by many who have had experiences of such things or who have witnessed actual manifestations. The story of a haunting that filled an ordinary modern-seeming house in Ireland with the sounds of desperate weeping was told to the writer. This weeping had been heard by certain tenants of the house in one of its rooms, and was purported to be caused by the spirit of a young girl who, finding herself to be pregnant, the father of her baby having deserted her, committed suicide by hanging herself in this room, and periodically her desperate weeping could be heard by the occupants. Do people really return in this sad way? Are there such things as ghosts of Anne Boleyn walking the night with her head under her arm? There are a myriad of such stories to be heard. It's been established by many, not everyone can see spiritual manifestations, and this is very much to do with the spiritual and physical makeup of each individual person. The basic plan for humanity has been explained over and over again in all the different articles that have been dictated, which is a physical life of roughly 70 years and 10, as has been recorded in the Christian Bible. This will never change, no matter what medical discoveries are made. This is the basic plane of a physical life, which may be a little more or a little less. After this time, each person goes for his or her spiritual rest period of some rest and of time of respiration. After this is complete, he or she may return again to live another very similar but basically quite different physical life in the same planet, which is their basic physical home. Rarely do people accepting those of exceptional gifts return to live physical lives in other planets. Those who have progressed to a point beyond ordinary physical life, unless with special gifts and powers they ask to return for the sake of humanity, they pass on to live other physical lives in planets far above this one, and on a completely different timescale. Much of this knowledge is too complicated for ordinary human understanding. There are, however, those who seek continually, both in their physical lives and in their spiritual lives, to work against creation's plan. They are nothing more than a nuisance, whether living in one plane or another. Usually they are those who have no wish to progress in the normal sense, and neither have they any wish to lead useful, worthwhile lives, wherever they might be. They are never content to merely remain in a rest plane with other contented souls, but seek always after all manner of ways of invading authority and causing distress to others. Sometimes it is a fact that a troubled spirit, having left undone some task important to him or her, will evade authority and return to their physical place of residence and remain there for a time in the hope of making their wish known. They may be aware of some danger threatening a loved one and return to try and help them avoid it. These kind of hauntings are harmless, and it is best, if possible, to find some gifted psychic person who can discover what is troubling the unseen visitor and either carry out the task required or find out what they are trying to achieve. Once this is accomplished, the visitor will leave happily and hopefully go forward in the proper manner. There are examples such as the maidservant who had been brought up a devout Roman Catholic, who then, finding herself pregnant by a man who had deserted her, committed suicide. She realized what a terrible sin she had committed, not only destroying herself but her unborn child too, and was left full of the most terrible remorse, so much so that she was unable to pass on and take up the future life that had been planned for her. Some kindly member of the Roman Catholic Church should have been sent to her, or even a genuine psychic to persuade her to go and forget her misery and hopelessness. All situations are taken into account with great compassion by those who have the power over life and death, and her terrible remorse for her drastic actions, also the situation she found herself unable to contemplate, would all be dealt with fairly. Every life is designed to help us move forward, not always to be continually judged and punished. There are other spiritual entities that have never been human but wish to be. They belong to the dark powers and are ever hopeful that the powers of light will rescue them from the dreadful dark plains of servitude that they are forced to live in. By some trick they have managed to elude their masters and believe that if they draw near to the physical world of humanity, they may be rescued and one day themselves be given humanity. Sometimes they can even draw so near to a physical living person that he or she claims to be possessed and displays all the physical signs of such a thing having occurred. In most cases, the manifestation is not simply one entity, but very many. They do, of course, as has already been explained, tap vital energy from living persons if they can. Examples of this are mentioned in the Bible, where Jesus was reported to call out such entities from a poor, afflicted person. He was a man with very great spiritual power, and he knew what these entities were and what they wanted. Many times he had the power to destroy them utterly, but he had compassion even for them, and sent them on their way back to the proper place. Why did he cast a large number of such beings into a herd of pigs, thus destroying them, as is recorded in the parable of the Gadarene swine? Simply out of compassion. His concern was not merely the financial loss to the poor farmer would sustain at the death of his pigs, who were destroyed in the physical sense, would quickly revert to the spiritual and sustain little damage. His concern was principally for the welfare of these spiritual entities in a way that mankind cannot understand. He knew that in this way he could dispatch them without harm either to themselves, as they had cried out, "Do not hurl us into the deep," which he could well have done, thus destroying them forever, but instead dispatch them with other living creatures and give them perhaps a chance of one day achieving humanity. All things exist in just as real a way as the ordinary visible physical things that men and women can see and touch for themselves, but on different dimensions. In a very complicated way, we are all multidimensional. Our brains, which are our central computer, also exist on as many as 7 different dimensions, and so these entities can access certain people via these dimensions, but only in the spiritual sense. So some so-called hauntings are nothing more than that, what is called poltergeists or spiritual entities seeking salvation. They can be quickly dispatched by a simple ceremony in which prayers are said. There is much power to be produced by people getting together to pray for a common purpose. The only instance in which genuine caution and even fear should be observed is in any place where there are known to have been those who have been practicing the black arts. Darkness of the greatest possible powers could be likely to have been summoned in such cases, and a truly, as already mentioned in the Dictation on Evil Spirits, genuine exorcist, an unmarried member of the Catholic Church, should be consulted and a ceremony performed. Never take any risks where the black arts and those who practice it are concerned. Never believe the strange stories of those who claim to be white witches or wizards, or whatever unlikely claims are made. There are only 2 powers, that of good and evil, and those that want to progress should keep moving forward in genuine love and care for each other and their planet. So fear no ghosts, but try to help misplaced unhappy spirits if you come across them. Send away any poltergeist entities and shun anything evil that comes only from the powers of darkness. And then my comment. I've always felt all this sort of stuff to be a bit medieval in origin, although throughout my life there have been places that I've found extremely pleasant to be in, but never found out why. For instance, there was a bedroom at the top of my grandmother's house in Taunton. The house was built in the late 16th century. I believe something terrible had happened there, especially near the staircase. Occasionally my parents would sleep in that room when we visited, but I was still terrified to go up there, even when I was only 3 or 4 years of age. I later found out that my grandmother had some very strange experiences in that room, and my aunt would never go there at all. I never could understand how my mother could have received all this knowledge from the other side and yet feel nothing of the evil in that room. There are also strange rooms in the school I went to, also in Taunton. The school was built during George III's reign and had been at different times a plague hospital, a Carmelite convent for a silent order of nuns, and my school. I believe it is now luxury flats. However, I once got into conversation with a very interesting man who had been born into the Jewish faith but had decided to convert to the Roman Catholicism. He took instruction from a priest who he was put in touch with. The priest in question was also an experienced exorcist and took him with him a few times when he was engaged in this work. My friend said that on 1 or 2 occasions he actually felt the temperature in the room go cold and experienced the presence of a truly unpleasant entity. So it is not anything I would want to be involved in, but it does exist. And recently I saw on the television, they were talking about different houses, and some houses most definitely go into them, and they have a very unpleasant feeling about them. My house where I live, nobody has lived there except my family, and it was the show house before we moved there. And when I've seen patients there, many of them have said, what a lovely atmosphere your house has. Let's hope it continues to have. But no doubt there are houses that people have bought who have found that there is an unpleasant spiritual entity there, or some feeling about it. So that is definitely a case. Right, that's finished, Miles.